and welcome to Beyond the Noise, the podcast series from PRWeek UK. I'm PRWeek's news editor, Siobhan Holt, and today I'm joined by Heather Blundell, Chief Executive of Grayling UK. Heather has over 15 years of experience working for Edelman, Shandwick, and was the former Deputy Chief Executive at Ketchum UK before joining Grayling in October last year, taking over the reins of the comms agency from Johnny Curtis. It's owned by the strategic comms group Accordions, and Grayling is one of the top 25 agencies in the UK, according to PRWeek's most recent Top 150 consultancies ranking. It's great to speak to you today, Heather. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
How are you? All
I'm
good?
very well, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm happy the sun is shining.
Yeah, makes a change, doesn't it? It's a bit
than
weird.
On the weekend. It's lovely.
Bit strange for September, though.
Yes.
Not quite used to it. We're ready for autumn, and then it changes. Anyway, let's get into the podcast. We're going to get into details more shortly, but I thought briefly, could you describe your experience over the past 12 months in the new role?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been an amazing experience and, not without its challenges and stumbling blocks, but I can honestly say I think it's been the best 12 months of my career and the happiest I've been professionally. So, yeah, it's been a brilliant near 12 months.
That's really great. Many in the sector, I think, were surprised you moved agencies because you'd obviously won several can lines for Ketchum for your work with clients such as Iceland and Edelman. So what prompted the switch, would you say?
It certainly wasn't something that I took lightly. It's like moving any relationship. I'm definitely a bit of a lifer, and I've been a sort of a lifer at the agencies I've worked at as well. And what has felt like I did nearly 8 years at Edelman, I did nearly 8 years at Shandwick and a couple of years at Ketchum. And I had a great couple of years. They've got brilliant clients. They have outstanding talent. And you're right, we did win some epic awards and some brilliant new business. And I'm forever proud of those wins and of that work. And it was career-defining work for me. And I was exceptionally lucky to be able to work on the clients that you mentioned, Iceland, etc. I think it's like all of us in terms of our career and having those moments. Sometimes an opportunity comes up that you can't say no to. And I had been friends with Sarah Schofield, who's the global CEO at Accordions, for many years, and I have admired, Grayling as an agency for a long, long time. I think it's quite I would say this, but I think it's quite a unique agency. We've got 9 offices up and down the UK. A big centre in London, but we've got a very unique outlook in not being completely London centric, which was very important to me. As I had, when I was at Shandwick, ran Shandwick Manchester for many years and absolutely loved it. So I definitely wanted to get back to that, but it was an opportunity for a step up, autonomy over the business, and the business was in brilliant shape. And Johnny had done a brilliant job running the UK, but Sarah was moving into that global CEO role at Accordions, and there was just a clear runway for me and they wanted to come in and bring something fresh and something new, and I was just really up for that challenge. So yeah, I didn't say it lightly, but I'm really pleased that I did it.
Excellent. And you mentioned there that obviously you're Manchester based yourself. Yeah. Do you think there is a bit of a London centric vibe still in the PR industry?
Yes, I do. However, I do think we get many more briefs come through now that do want that outside of London perspective. And I think that something that's really happened within our industry that's changed, and you'll obviously love this as well, is that the media is less London-centric. And with, Manchester and Media City and, Channel 4 moving to Leeds. And I was in Birmingham last night at Birmingham Football Club, the big Wrexham game, which was very exciting. But I was chatting to some guys from the BBC, and a huge relocation from the BBC to Birmingham as well. So actually, for us to be able to sit in front of clients and sit in new business and say, we don't just know London media, we know all the media outside. I mean, that's perfect for campaigns. So I think it's vital to have an outside of London perspective when we are servicing UK-wide clients.
And with that, Manchester, obviously, I think people have more of a perception that that's a growing area, but are there other areas in the UK then that you'd say, because obviously you've got so many offices, that are sort of hidden and untapped cities maybe to be approaching?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, actually. And one of, I guess, the surprising things for me in this role and going around my little regional tour of the UK, we've got an amazing office in Southampton and a really vibrant workforce there. And they do incredible clients like Red Funnel, the sort of ferries, and amazing national relationships. And actually such an interesting and growing part of our economy. And they're a really brilliant team. And I would just never have thought, we should have an office out in Southampton. So And of course, we've won some brilliant work in Birmingham and, as you say, Leeds and Manchester, especially in terms of the infrastructure and building work that's going on there. And we've got a brilliant presence in Scotland as well, which continues to thrive. So, yeah, but there have been some surprise and delight moments in terms of our offices and which ones are really growing and having, a great time and winning interesting clients.
Yeah, and Grayling obviously won an award at our corporate awards, which was for work in Wales.
Yeah,
and
she's great.
Are the regions, would you say there's more going on there, or?
I would actually say the business is performing well. Obviously, the whole industry had a tough time last year.
Yeah, it did.
I think that we are beginning to definitely see faster recovery in London. And perhaps this is just our model. And actually, we've seen the regions did pretty well last year, and we've actually probably seen in terms of growth a bit of a slowdown in our regions this year. But I think the beauty of having that UK network and a genuine integration across offices, and I've seen that in other agencies when they sort of say, we're so integrated, but actually they don't have any shared business or shared accounts. We really do, which means actually if we do have a bit of slowdown in one area or one office, that we can, support it and spread the work around as well. So no, I wouldn't say we're seeing it sort of busier and faster growth in the regions. I think the recovery has definitely been more focused in London, but I'm really hopeful that will come, and I'm positive it will come in the regions as well.
Like a knock-on effect.
Hope so, yeah.
I'm going to move on now and ask some changes that have occurred under your watch. So firstly, in August, Grayling launched a media relations unit called Grayling Media. And for those that don't know, that was supported by 5 prominent media and broadcasting figures, the likes of Lucy Cave from entertainment editor at ITV's Lorraine. And I just found that a very interesting idea. I mean, what was the aim behind that and how has it fared?
I think I'm incredibly passionate about this. I think for several years, even pre-COVID, I've seen something weird happen in our industry, and I don't know if we've just got used to it, or I felt like we became a bit apologetic for our craft, and our craft, is we are PR agencies. We can sit in front of clients and say, I'm going to get you wall-to-wall coverage. But I sat in sort of many meetings and, lots of agencies who do amazing work, but I sometimes think, are we overcomplicating this and all these add-ons and perhaps trying to be something that we're not, and in order to compete with, ad agencies, etc. And actually, 90% of the briefs that we get through, 90% of the PR briefs that we get through, clients want coverage. And if they don't want coverage, it's because they want to be out of the news because something's gone wrong. And so I still sit in the majority of our new business pitches talking about how to get coverage. And yeah, we do creative campaigns, and yes, of course, we can earn ideas in terms of social, but we still need to be owners of our craft. And I still sell in now. I've still got loads of my media relationships and working with the Today programme, etc. And I absolutely love that. I still love getting coverage. I mean, I'm so old, I still love getting print coverage. I just felt like we needed to actually embrace that and put something around it. And I think what's changed in terms of media relations is, I'd be interested in your opinion on this, but it becomes so much about our personal relationships as well. So encouraging the team to maintain their media relationships, not just to become, you see these people become more senior and, I don't do sell-ins anymore, or, I don't work with the media anymore. Like, it should become more important within your job, because that's what we're selling to clients, those relationships and those personal relationships as well. So, I wanted something that showcased that level of personal relationships that we have across the UK. So, in Scotland, from Leeds to Manchester, particularly in London, and with broadcasters and, with our advisory board, to be able to say, actually, this is what we're passionate about and this is what we're brilliant at. And we've got a launch event coming up, and we're doing it with Sophie Ridge from Sky News. And we've got some brilliant data and really interesting data that shows that 50% of under 35s don't really engage with broadcasters. They're much more influenced by the actual journalist. And we've seen that when we get almost these sort of media influencers now, and us having relationships with those media influencers and understanding who is influencing the narrative and, the direction of travel is incredibly important, and we need to be at the forefront of that. So it was kind of just owning exactly what it is that we do. And in my opinion, we're the best connected media agency in the UK, particularly given our bricks and breadth.
Going back to your question, I do agree. I think that personal relationship is just so important. And this is my second job in a trade title, and I still email quite often other agencies that you specialise in jewellery, and I'll say, I've moved now, and we still have that relationship. So I think you're completely right. I am interested to know then how you balance that, moving up a career ladder, because there will be plenty of our listeners that are trying to balance that whilst then still keeping what you used to do and what you joined the industry for.
Yeah.
Do you find that hard if you're managing teams?
Totally. And I would say that's probably something that I haven't got a brilliant balance of, because I still really love doing client work, which probably pisses everyone off. But I think I've worked before leaders, not many actually, most leaders I've worked with have stayed really involved with clients, but you can tell if they're not. And, if people lose their eye for media and eye for creative or how to manage client relationships. And the only way you can be brilliant at that is to continue to do it. So, I'm not pretending that I still review the status report, but I think it's really important, however senior you are, that you maintain your client relationships, stay billable. I think that's really important in terms of agencies, and prove your worth. And, that comes with new business, and it comes from existing, clients. We can be so focused on growth and new business that, you can become a sausage factory and you can win a bit of business and service it for a year or two, and then it floods out the back end and you have a real sort of leaky bucket issue when that happens. So I think servicing our existing clients and treating them like they're new clients all the time, even if you've had them for 8 years, and mixing up the teams and bringing fresh energy and fresh creative. But no, my advice to senior counsel, and people can be a bit scared of it sometimes. They don't want to become more senior because they think, I'll have my head stuck in a resourcing tracker and I won't be able to do all the stuff that I love. And yeah, you will have your head stuck in a resourcing tracker a bit, but you just have to get that balance and stay involved in your clients, because you will not be able to win and grow business if you don't understand how to service business anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. I also wanted to ask, just to go back to the Grayling Media, so how do the advisors work? How is that helping the business?
Yeah, so they'll sit on what we call a kind of advisory board, and we did a pitch last week, and we ran all of the creative. So Jordan from Sidemen, as you said, is one of our advisors, and Lucy Cave, who's entertainment at ITV. It was a consumer pitch. We had the creative ideas, and they worked through the creative with us. And actually it was really interesting, because one of the ideas we thought was a brilliant idea, and Lucy was like, I just don't think that's going to generate news. It's not news. I wouldn't write about it. And for us to have those conversations in terms of like, oh, wasn't this a lovely idea? And they're like, yeah, but you want coverage.
Yeah.
So it comes back to what is going to generate coverage, because a lot of our clients often, they don't have new news. That's our job. We need to generate headlines and storylines, and to be working with experts who know what generates headlines, or Simon, in terms of innovation and stuff that avenues that we might not think of, so they can help us as an agency at the ideation stage. I think with some of our advisors, they can also help our clients directly. So we've got the story, how do you think this is going to play out, and what should our response be, and what should our key messages be? We can run it by our advisory board. So yeah, directly with clients and with us as an agency, I think that that it's that counsel and that expertise that we can learn from, and it's been really well received.
That sounds really interesting. And that's not the only thing you've launched. You've launched a new integrated, that word again, healthcare division. Did the agency have a health division beforehand, and how has this developed the specialism, if it did?
Yeah, so I'm a big believer in letting people work on stuff that they want to work on, which sounds very simple, but it's not always the case with agencies. I think you can get sort of forced into this mold and told you need to tick a million boxes before you get, promoted. And it just doesn't work like that. We're so different. And actually, as we begin to understand how diverse and how neurodiverse we are, we can't stop forcing people into these different roles.
And would you say that, because I know we've spoken about your career over the years as well, but you didn't have that as experience, did you? You were pushed into roles that maybe you personally might have felt you weren't ready for. Yeah. So is that coming from your own experience maybe a bit as well? Challenge people and see what they do?
Of course, yeah. And also I know what you're referring to there, actually. I've just remembered the story. Yeah, I would say when I was given, you're referring to, I was given an MD post at Weber Shandwick, and I just remember, I mean, it was amazing of them, and such a vote of confidence in me and I always remember it, because I always look at talent in our agency and think, you'll be running this team in a few years' time, irrelevant of what level or how old you are. You can see sort of leadership quality in people, because I was fortunate enough that someone saw it in me, but I didn't feel quite right. I remember completely freaking out and saying no, and they said, oh, well, give it 6 months and we'll see how you're doing. And they stood shoulder to shoulder with me, and they were brilliant. But yes, But I also think, in terms of going back to the health question, we had a couple of directors within our business that loved working on health work. They did have health clients. They were working on World Health Organization, Sanofi, Janssen, but it was in different parts of our business. We hadn't put it all in one, and they were having to work on other stuff as well. And actually, it was about sort of stripping away some of the other stuff, saying, okay, let's focus on health. Let's build health. Who else in the agency has got health experience, of which we had about 30 individuals and want to work on health. And actually that has led to us, building a new division focused on that. It's already growing. We've won quite a big client across, corporate public affairs and health policy as well. And I think that's because we've just allowed people to focus on what they want to do and what they're good at. And I think the sort of products and services that you're referring to, the thing I'm, I guess, most proud of is I haven't sort of sat in a dark room and thought of them. They've all been led by the business. So it's people coming up. Grayling Media was pitched as part of it when people in the business want to become directors and are ready to become directors. They sit a panel, which is sort of a UK leadership panel, and we can ask them interview questions, and they do a presentation. And his presentation was on Grayling Media, and we've taken it from a presentation in order to get promotion into something that is living and breathing and winning us business. And the same with health. We had a couple of directors. One was a consumer health specialist, one was policy health specialist, one was more of a corporate specialist, saying we want to work on health, let's build a division. I think it was that sort of encouraging that entrepreneurial spirit within the business and saying, what are we brilliant at, and let's run after it.
Excellent. So how then is the business faring? Are there any areas that are strongest for you that you're seeing?
Yeah, in terms of sort of growth and performance this year, we've actually done a lot of crisis work this year, which is always interesting and sometimes complicated, and there's a lot of grey and it's not a straight line. So we've done a lot of crisis this work and been involved in some really high profile work, but I think it's very interesting for people to be part of. And when I was at Edelman, we worked on some of the biggest crisis stories, and it sets so much for me in terms of my career and my understanding of how to advise clients. So yeah, that we've seen a lot of that this year, and something that we're really looking to continue to grow as well.
Have you seen any trends in the difference to how you maybe the stuff you were dealing with at Edelman versus what's going on now?
Yeah, because social has just boomed now. I mean, we probably used to, I can't even remember where we were at with social back then. But yeah, I mean, news breaks and we monitor conversations on all the social platforms in exactly the same way as we do media now. In fact, probably faster on social. What are people saying? Who are the influencers? Who are the detractors? So it's a completely different style of crisis management now. But I think, so that's been really high performing. We've also got a part of our business, which isn't ever something that I've done before, but Grayling has a property infrastructure and development team within our business, which I think is probably the fastest growing bit of our business. And so we've got clients such as National Grid. We're doing quite a lot of work for Birmingham City Football Club on it, Stena. So that's a huge area of growth for us as a business, and very interesting and different work as well.
So what are the challenges with that maybe is something you're seeing?
Probably have to ask that team what they think the challenges are. I think probably working within planning and regulation, and I mean,
the red tape.
Yeah, exactly. And the red tape. Yeah, exactly. But and I probably thought it was quite sort of bog standard before I started. But I've seen some of the work they do. It's so creative, and again, all about relationship building and all about supporting our clients in terms of their communication and plans and working with local communities, and it's very diverse and interesting work.
Yeah, I can imagine, especially from a media perspective.
Yeah.
I bet really broad.
Yeah.
So what would you say then has been your biggest challenge so far?
As I said, it's been a really positive experience. Of course, like running a big agency, we've got 9 offices, got 200 people. The market is better. It's still hard, and I think most leaders would be saying that. So there is challenge. There's challenge absolutely everywhere. I think for me personally, starting this new job, and I'd had a bit of gardening leave, so I was sort of like, towards the end of the year, I started like raring to go, and these poor sods were like limping towards the finishing line, and I was like, let's do a video, let's do this. So I think a bit of a challenge for me initially was probably actually taking a bit of a step back and listening to, you know, the agency's got lots of people who've been at Grayling for a long time, which is so brilliant, and really understand the business. And I have worked at several, as you've said, several global agencies, but they've all so different, and there is not a one size fits all approach to, you know, a two agency. So I could walk in fact, I think I did walk in with an idea of what I wanted to do and what I thought the agency would be like, and it was totally different. So for me to actually spend a month or two just listening, understanding before I haven't ripped anything up at all, didn't need ripping up, it was in a really good place. But, you know, to be able to just take that time, again, not a challenge, but something I probably had to challenge myself to do because it doesn't come perhaps very naturally to me. But no, again, the industry is, as I said, better, still hard, and taking a bit of a step back and getting to know the business.
Brilliant. Was there anything then that surprised you though about the role? You say there was challenges that you personally had to look at, but was there anything that you were surprised at?
I don't know if there was anything that I was sort of particularly surprised at. I think, again, working as to sit in front of clients and prospects and say, well, we've got, 9 offices across the UK. We've got these different specialisms. We've got corporate, we've got consumer, we've got brand, planning, infrastructure, but we're totally integrated across the UK. And we've got these amazing media relations and relationships, etc. And, that doesn't come without its challenges, and it's not seamless, but it really does work. And it works the best of any agency I've been at. So I wouldn't say it may be surprising that it does work as well as it does, which was nice. Rather than, oh God, this is a problem area, or this, the whole of the network really does get on and really do work very well together. There are also, challenges within that, and managing revenue, and each office has, different sort of microcultures that you don't want to erode, but you want people to feel part of a network. Funnily enough, I wasn't there at during this time, but I've heard that actually it worked probably best as a UK network during COVID because everyone was at home, and so it felt sort of very flat rather than all the different divisions. But yeah, I guess surprising that actually we can deliver what we're saying we can deliver, and that's very unique in terms of an agency in the UK, in terms of that network and where we're located as well.
Brilliant. Moving on then, so I'm going to ask you a bit more about client and agency relationships, because at the moment, anecdotally, we're getting a lot of agencies saying that they're suffering from ghosting and poor pitching, and some have said it's been the worst they've ever seen it, is some people's view. I'm just wondering what your overall view is, and have you surrendered any accounts in your tenure?
Being ghosted by clients, God, that's bad times. Are people saying that?
Yeah, that they're just not hearing back. And
yeah. Oh, wow. I have let clients and accounts go, not loads, because I do think normally you can work through things. And normally we've done that because, we had such high turnover on accounts. And it's such a bold move when you see a leader do it. I remember being at Weber, and we had a really big client and such a difficult relationship, and we were just turning people over all the time. We just had a constant revolving door of people, and in the end, we said, fine, don't want this business. The respect and how valued it made people feel within the agency. I mean, it's a pretty scary thing to do as a leader, because you then need to go and replace that revenue and more. But actually it's the right thing to do. Haven't had to do it loads because you can normally work things through. Your question about new business is really interesting, and I think no one's got this nailed, and everyone has had a tough time with this. I don't think I've had many ghosting issues on new business. I have had a few being put through sort of 3 rounds of the ringer and then being told there's no budget. I mean, stuff like that is obviously really difficult, and very difficult for teams, and honestly, time and the time wasted. I think where we've got to as an agency, and I think we've got to a pretty good place with this, is being pretty strategic about what we're going after, and not in a luxurious way that I'm turning things down sort of left, right and centre, but we do have a lens that we filter things through, which probably sounds a bit crude, but it's a kind of rich, famous, happy lens of a new business brief. And the rule is it has to tick at least 2 of them. If it ticks 3, happy days. But if it's not going to bring us a lot of revenue, and make us happy, or sometimes got no budget. I've got something at the moment that's got absolutely no budget, but we'll win loads of awards for it, and it will really drive that fame. So we're going to go for it, and people will be really happy working on it. So I think it's got to tick 2 of those 3 boxes, preferably 3. And then the third thing, I think you've just got to have those, like any other relationship, those red flag moments. If they won't talk to you before the pitch, then it's very unlikely that you're going to have an ongoing relationship with you. So sometimes it's not possible because, when they're very procurement led, but I always say that as a bit of a red flag. If they're like, there's a brief, see you in 3 weeks. We have the best pitches, and I've just done a really good pitch process where they gave us time to ask questions. We met with them, had a chemistry session. We then had a tissue session with the creative, and then we had the pitch. And actually by the end of it, we almost felt like we were working together, and the ideas were really on point because we'd been through a couple of rounds where they've said, not this and not this. It improves the outcome for clients. And that's what, my advice would be to any clients going through a pitch process is, if you want to get brilliant results at the end of it, work with your, don't invite 8 agencies, invite 3 or 4, at least whittle it down to 3 or 4, and then work with them until you get to the final pitch process, and you'll get some really good stuff.
Because that's interesting, because I've definitely had some people say that they find a lot of those processes, particularly maybe if you're a smaller agency, that can be more of a drain on resources because it can go on for several months and you're not sure of the outcome.
Yeah.
But I get your point that maybe it's showing your worth, isn't it, throughout those stages?
Of course, it's a total drain, and you have to manage that very carefully all the time in terms of people's utilisation and their billability and the time spent on new business. I think something that's definitely happened that is a challenge for all agencies is the length of time to convert business as well. So, it used to be win it on Friday, start on Monday. Now it's just, I want a bit of business in February, and I think I'm going to sign a contract this week. I've just never known anything like it. And actually, in terms of our forecasting and planning, we have to be really aware of that in terms of when we're actually expecting revenue to land as well. So that is the change that we have seen over the last year or two for sure.
And do you think that's now the new norm? Do you think agencies are just going to have to get on board with that because that's the way it will be with clients, or do you think it's just a temporary situation for the time being?
I don't know. I suppose maybe it might be a reflection of where the market is. And as agencies, the industry's had a tough time, but so have so many of our clients. I mean, last year we just saw that money just being stripped back out of budgets, more and more going in-house. And so if you are going to choose to work with an agency, and if I was a client, I'd want to make damn sure that I got the right agency as well. Yeah. So it wasn't, and that I'd had a long working relationship with that agency. So I would want to get it right. I think something going on for months and months and months is probably not wise, but I do understand why clients and those pitch processes are perhaps taking longer. So, hopefully it will speed up, but I shouldn't expect it will drastically change, no.
And then obviously another challenge that's definitely in the industry is recruitment. So what would you say the PR recruitment market's like now, and how has it changed over the past year? How are you finding it as an agency boss?
Yeah, so it's an interesting one, recruitment. I would say like right now, actually, I feel like the market feels, in terms of talent and movement, I think it feels quite slow and a bit flat. I'm not seeing loads of people move agencies. I think this year I've had a handful of people resign. I think maybe less than 5. I mean, we've really not seen a lot of turnover. And then it happens. I'll probably get 5 resignations next week. It can be a domino effect sometimes. I also don't think sometimes it's a bad thing. Sometimes it can be a sign that the market's picking up and, money's moving a bit. So I would say that I try and console myself with that sometimes, that I think, okay, fine, if people are moving, then, the whole thing's moving, the briefs will start moving. So, but at the moment, I feel like it has felt a bit slower. But I think that in terms of talent and recruitment and management, something that we're certainly trying to do at the moment is, if we do have someone leave, there's always the sort of temptation to just bounce to replace someone and get a like for like, and it's not always the case, actually. As I want to reward people for staying at the agency. I had this conversation with my corporate team actually just this week of saying, hey, your model looks like this at the moment. In 6 months' time, how does it look? In 12 months' time, how does it look? So we can see people progressing, we can see the whole thing moving, and I want to bear that in mind in terms of my talent and the way I recruit, rather than just saying, account director's left, let's hire another account director. Let's have a look at my senior managers and who might be able to step up. So I think I'm trying to hold myself accountable for that as well. And then we've also done something really interesting with our recruitment. We've just partnered with a company called Mavite, which do incredible blind redactions on CVs. They showed me 2 CVs which were identical, but one had 29 points of information redacted from it, and the other was as I would read it without those redactions. And I got all the information that I needed from that redacted CV. But you read it in a completely different way. So it's part of our DEI strategy, because we could see that we had certain CVs that just weren't even making it through to the paper sift. So we're the first agency that's worked with Mavite, and I think I'm really encouraged about what that's going to do in terms of our recruitment and who we're going to see through the doors, because we all have that unconscious bias whenever we look at anything and whenever we look at a CV, and actually there's a lot of irrelevant information on those CVs. So we need to see people's experience and we need to see certain criteria, but there's so much on there that we don't need to see.
So what was redacted? What were some of the examples?
Where they went to school.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was going to say, was it type of education and things like that?
Yeah. Where they went to school, university, in some cases grades, but you can still see relevant experience and and their career history to date, because actually the conversations you can have, you can unearth those details in front of someone. But actually, if you're not even making it through the first round because of what school you went to and how that might trigger someone's unconscious bias, then how do you ever get through that?
Yeah, absolutely. I was actually going to say that in a similar vein, Grayling has again participated in PRWeek and People Like Us's pay gap report. And I was just wondering, how are you handling diversity? Because obviously you've mentioned some elements there with recruitment. So how are you handling diversity and working towards closing its pay gap? And could you point out maybe to one or two things that you've noticed have made a real difference? So
we have provided our data to the PRWeek pay gap report, and actually, it's a positive story for us. We've got a 0% gender pay gap. We've actually got a +4 positive ethnicity pay gap, which is really, really positive. And I've provided this detail in the annotation to the data, which is actually we're excelling in terms of the ethnicity pay gap at a senior level. We have still got some work to do at a junior level. So it's a really interesting and helpful exercise to do. So I would recommend all leaders do it, because that might not have been brought to my attention if we hadn't have done that. So, we're working with a team to improve that. But overall, in terms of our averages, it is 0% on gender and +4 on ethnicity, which is great. I would say, we have launched a pretty robust DEI strategy at the start of this year. And as part of that, tracking our data and making sure we had that parity in terms of pay and progress is so important. And, I can't take any credit for this, but I can give total credit to our head of people in the UK and also our head of finance in the UK, because we have introduced quarterly promotion and pay rise cycles. And in that process, with every quarter, they will go through every single line of every single person within the agency and make sure that we have no issues in terms of gender and ethnicity pay gaps when we are doing those promotions and pay rises, which has actually meant in some cases we've had to make a series of smaller payments in order to close that gap. And we're fortunate because, we've got the, support from Accordiance and to be able to, have that autonomy and be able to rebalance wherever we had any issues. So it's been a really helpful exercise. It's a positive story for us. I obviously feel now some challenge in order to maintain it and improve on it as well. So I do understand why some leaders feel nervous about it, or some businesses might not want to partake because you want to have a good story. All I would say is I think if businesses are out there talking about their DEI partnerships and DEI strategy, then they need to be willing to provide the data as well.
Well, thank you, Heather. That's all we have time for this week's episode. Thanks so much for coming in. We really appreciate it. And thanks for listening. Bye for now.